Welcome to the Earning Freedom Program, the Straight A Guide Mastermind course. Today we are speaking with my good friend, Israel Torres. Israel, welcome to our program. This is your second time back. I just want to thank you for sharing your story with our audience again.
Appreciate you for having me for a second time. It's a pleasure and an honor. I grew up in the Dallas area. At a young age, as I was growing up, I was into gangs and following the wrong path of different people that I wouldn't say that I shouldn't have been hanging around with, but everything you go through, you learn from it. It was a learning experience for me going through the wrong footsteps. But at an early age, about 13, 14 years old was the first time I had a run-in with the laws.
Did you get confined when you were 13 or 14 or just charged? Or tell us a little bit about what happened.
One day it was me, my brother, and his girlfriend, and I think we was going to my mom's house, and we got pulled over, and I had a gun. I tried to put it under my brother's seat, under the back seat. I told him I couldn't put it under the seat. So he's like, man, the cops are already pulling us over. He said, they see you moving around too much, they're going to get more suspicious. So I just left it in my waistband, or try to put it on the side of my seat at first, but I couldn't. So I just put it in my waistband. And when they pulled us out the car, they patted us down and they found a gun. And they was like asking me, why did I have a gun at such a young age? And I was just like, well, the neighborhood I live in, I just feel like I got to carry it around with me. So, they held me over for like maybe 3 hours waiting for my dad to come pick us up. That was my first run in with the cops.
And eventually you came in for a much more serious sentence that we'll talk about. You had a life sentence. In between the time that first run in and your life sentence, did you have any other altercations with the authorities?
Yes. As I was growing up, I had moved from the Dallas area because my mother felt like I was getting in trouble. And so she sent me to go live with my dad, which my dad lived in McKinney. So when I started going to school over there, 14, 15, there was a school over there called the Link Center. It was like an alternative school for kids that didn't really want to go to school like at a certain time or whatever. So they would go to that school. It's called the Link Center. And you did your work at your own pace. If you wanted to do your work fast, and you could graduate at an early age, or if you wanted to just slack, it was totally up to you. So
how old were you when you got in trouble with the feds?
When they picked us up, I was 21.
So you got busted when you were 21. What year was that?
1998.
And what did they charge you with?
They charged everybody in the indictment with conspiracy.
Did you know what kind of sentence you were facing when they initially charged you?
Never. I never would have thought that I could receive a life sentence for dealing and then it was small amounts of drugs. They just made it into something bigger than what it really was.
Sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. I'd like you to tell our audience a little bit about how the adjustment went for you in the beginning.
When I first got sentenced, of course, I had to wait to get to whatever institution I was going to. Whenever I got there, I had a couple of co-defendants there. There was like 5 co-defendants that I had there at the time. So when I got there, of course, I was accepted with open arms. And I'm fresh off the street, so I was kind of hot-headed. Bumping heads with guards, and I didn't really bump heads too much with inmates unless there was a reason to. But I try to avoid any altercation with anybody because I know it could become a big issue. So I just try to avoid all the altercations that I could.
Did you recognize any relationship between your behavior in prison and what you were going to do when you got out?
I always felt one day I would be out, but I just didn't know when. At the beginning, when I first got locked up, I didn't think about it. I didn't think about coming home right then because I knew it was going to be a process, especially after I was in there for a little while and going to the law library and talking to different writers or whatever, or paralegals, and them explaining the process to me. So I just didn't really think about it too much at the beginning. As time went on, I was gone for 2 years. My brother passed away. That's when I really realized, like, okay, I already put my mom and dad, we both did, already put my mom and my dad through enough. There's no reason for me to continue to put them through any more heartache and pain. So after my brother passed away, that's when I really like opened my eyes and really just concentrated on fighting for my freedom, fighting to get home.
What steps do you put in place to start putting you in the pathway to eventually get out?
You just got to think of what you really want. If you want to stay in prison for the rest of your life, or if you want to have that chance to come home, it's just up to the person that's sitting there if they feel like they want to make that change to come back home. I mean, first and foremost, I guess the man above. I mean, prayer and keeping hope and faith alive. And you got to have a good support system, a good support team to help you get past them days that you're thinking like, dang, am I ever going to come home? So I mean, that's when you pick up the phone, write a letter or whatever, get that feedback that you want to hear, get that positive vibe from your family members or loved ones or whoever it is that you lean your head on.
So you started your prison sentence when President Clinton was in the White House.
Yes.
And you were there with President George H.W. Bush. And then you were there for 2 of his terms. And then you were there for the first 2 for President Obama's term.
Right.
When you made a decision that you were going to start living for your family and preparing yourself for success and preparing yourself for the possibility of getting out, can you give us any insight of how your behavior changed in prison?
Like I said, after my brother passed away, that's when my attitude changed, and I became more mellow. I mean, they gave me the nickname Easy. I was always walking around smiling. Nobody ever knew how much time I had. So after my brother passed away, that's when I really realized that my mom and dad was old. For my brother to have passed away, I just felt like I wanted to be there with my mom and my dad. Thing was, I need to do what I need to do to try to get home, to be with them and to enjoy life with them before I lose them. So that was my thing. I just started going to school. That's one thing that COs look at, and whenever you file your clemency petition, that's what they want to see. They want to see if you're doing something to better yourself. If you're going to school, if you're taking any kind of correspondence classes on the outside or through whatever the BOP provides, that's what they're looking for.
What was your educational background before you went into the prison system?
I almost finished school, and the school that I was going to, which is the Link Center, I was really ahead of my grade for my age, because I was trying to hurry up and get it done and over with. But then I had a baby, a son, so I started working with my dad and just trying to provide for my son. So I stopped going to school, wanted to go to work full time to provide for my son and his mom.
How many years passed before you enrolled in the GED program?
1 year, I believe. A year passed.
So after a year, you started going to school.
Right.
And after it took you but a few months to get your GED?
It took me, when we was taking the test, we took a lunch break and somebody stole the test booklet and took it back to the unit. So when they was going through the booklets while we was at lunch, they've seen that one of the booklets was missing. So they was trying to look for that booklet and they never found it because I think the dude took it back to the unit and he had somebody do the work for him, and he was bringing the answers back with them, and he tore up the book and flushed it. So they had to change up the whole GED program, and they stopped it for a year. We were still going to school and class, but we couldn't take our GED for a whole year until all the booklets were replaced.
What else did you do? How else did you start building a record that would make you a candidate to get out of prison?
HVAC, heating and air conditioning. I took carpentry, cabinet making, CDL classes, entrepreneurship classes, health classes. I mean, there's just numerous classes that I took just to keep busy and to keep my mind off of the world, I guess, off of the sentence that I had. Just trying to keep my mind occupied. At softball, I got different certificates for softball. handball, play handball. We had tournaments for handball. There's a whole bunch of certificates that I have.
Tell me about how the rest of the people in prison, what was their reaction to your focus on going through courses like HVAC or these other courses that you described when you had a life sentence? What was their level of support or discouragement? Did they encourage you, discourage you? What was their reaction to you?
Oh yeah, they encouraged me because, I mean, they was more of an encouragement than a discouragement. And they supported me, and they never knew why, like, I was taking them, because I had a life sentence. Like, man, why are you in here? I mean, you got a life sentence. I'm like, I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to better myself, because there's going to be that one day that I might get that chance to go home. And I don't want to just be, I got to take advantage of the time that I'm in here instead of not doing anything. Because if they just kick me out, I ain't going to have nothing to fall back on. That's why I was taking
So you always kept in your mind, there may come an opportunity for me to get out of here.
Correct.
Even when you were listening to politicians talking about tough on crime and there'd never be any hope, and case managers would be telling you got nothing coming, you never let that discourage you. You always said, someday it's going to be right.
Yeah. I went from, when I first got locked up, from all your appeals, I've been told no and denied the whole time I was locked up. So it wasn't nothing new for me. If they would have denied my clemency, it wouldn't have been something new for me, because I was told no my whole time I was locked up. I mean, I got denied from all my appeals, my straight appeal, my 2255, my 2241, everything. I got denied. But I still didn't believe that was it. I still believe that there's something else. There's something that's going to come through that's going to help me get home. And I should have got my time reduced under Apprendi, but I didn't get my time reduced because I was in the SHU at the time, and they said I filed in an untimely manner. I would have had my time dropped to 30 years a long time ago before I even got granted clemency.
Walk us through how you ended up learning about the commutation process and what specific steps you took.
After I was locked up for about 5 or 6 years, there was this guy from Louisiana. I think one time we were sitting there playing cards. He didn't know how much time I had, and I think he had asked me, and I told him. He felt bad because he asked me, because he told me, he's like, man, damn, my bad. And then after we finished playing space, like, man, he said, whenever we get up from playing cards, he said, man, I'm going to holler at you. I said, all right. So he took me up to his room, and he pulled out these papers. He said, have you ever heard of this? I said, what is it? He said, it's a clemency petition. He said, man, just I'm going to give you this copy, make you 4 or 5 more copies, and just put it in your paperwork. I didn't file this clemency petition until maybe 10 years later down the road, because I'm still going through all my process. I believe I was waiting on my 2241 at the time. So when he gave it to me, I didn't think nothing of it. I mean, like I said, I've been told no up until that time, and I was still waiting on to be told no again. I just put it up in the rest of my paperwork. One day I pulled it out, and I just looked at it and started reading, looking at the questions that it was asking. And it's asking you questions from even your driving record. They want your citation numbers from the tickets. I'm like, man, it's going to take forever for me to get all this stuff, because I got traffic tickets. I have prior convictions for drugs. And I'm like, man, it's going to take. So I just put it back in my paperwork and just left it alone again for a while. A couple of years come down the road, I get another cellie. I get a cellie, because I think my other cellie went home. I get a cellie, a guy from San Antonio. He had asked me if I knew anything about the clemency as well. And he's like, man, there's a paper that you can fill out that you can get your time reduced and you can go home. I said, yeah. I said, I think I know what it is. I said, I got the application. I pulled it out and I showed it to him. He's like, yeah, that's it. He's like, man, you need to file it. You need to see if they'll grant it. I'm like, man, he said, what can they tell you? He said, you got a life sentence. You say they've been telling you no this whole time. So what else can they tell you? No. I'm like, yeah, you're right. But I still remembered all the questions it was asking and all the time I was going to have to go through to get these citation numbers and stuff like that. But as time went on, I'm another 2 or 3 years passed by, and I pull these papers out again, and I look at them, and I start writing places I remember I had tickets at, and getting all the information that is requiring on this application. I asked this one guy, they know all these addresses you're supposed to write to. Austin, you can write to Austin and get like everything on your record. So he wrote me a letter, and I got some more information that I needed to put on this application. And he asked me, he's like, why are you trying to get all this information? I said, well, I'm trying to fill out this clemency application. He said, man, I'll help you out if you need me to. I said, all right. I said, I appreciate it. Time comes for me to fill out my application. I take it to him, and he's like, okay. He said, well, just write a couple of things down about yourself. He said, and I'm going to put something together and see what you think. So he gave it to me. I did it. I changed some things up, and he typed it up for me. I sent it in, not thinking,
What year was this that you did this?
2012.
12. So you were in prison for about that time, about what, 15 years or so?
Yeah.
How was your disciplinary record?
Being out of bounds a couple of times, which is during census count. I was in a unit and I was supposed to be at work. I didn't have probably about 3-4 write-ups, and they wasn't major write-ups.
So your disciplinary record was pretty good, except for some minor write-ups.
Right.
You completed a lot of classes.
Yeah.
Tell us about how you selected your friends. Were you careful to select friends that were also positive, or tell us a little bit about that?
I mean, I had friends all over. Everybody knew who I was because I talked to everybody. And I mean, I hung around people from my city and I mean, around the Texas area or whatever. Everybody knew who I was because of how much time I had and because of how I carried myself. I carried myself with respect, and I gave everybody else their respect. Them knowing how much time I had, they're like, I mean, I didn't really have to select my friends, is because it's just, I knew how to carry myself around anybody. And if I seen a youngster like getting out of line or getting mad for a certain reason, sometimes I pull them to the side and be like, and just, give them a little bit of advice. And I'm like, man, it's up to you if you want to take it, but I'm just letting you know. And sometimes they would be like, why are you even telling me this? I'm fixing to go home next year or something. I'm like, all right, well, I mean, I'm just letting you know regardless of when you go home. I'm just letting you know I ain't never going home. So I'm just trying to, and they just look at me like, dang. Yeah, I didn't really have to select. I mean, I did, and I didn't really talk to or hang around too many people. Older people, I would really like try to surround myself around the older crew because I know they can teach me something. Knowledge that they have that I didn't have. My dad always used to tell me the same thing. One of these days, you're going to remember my words. And sure enough, every day when I was in prison, I used to think about what my dad used to tell me. And I used to tell myself, like, man, he used to tell me this. He's going to tell me that I'm going to remember these words that he's telling me.
So you submitted your paperwork and then you waited. And tell us what happened. How did you hear from the pardon attorney?
2012, I filed my paperwork. It took about a year and something for them to respond back. December 17th, 2014 is when I got the best news of my life.
Tell us how it happened. What happened to you?
I was at work. I worked commissary, had one of the best jobs on the compound. Well, it was the best job because Unico wasn't there no more. So we got home from work. We just passed out the Christmas bags. I go back to the unit. I asked one of my little friends if he wanted to play spades. He's like, yeah. So before we start playing cards, I go upstairs and make me a cup of coffee, come downstairs and check in my email. And the guy I'm going to play spades with comes up and stands beside me while I'm checking my email. The guard comes out of his office and he yells my name. And I turn, I look at him and he's like, he wants you in the warden's office. I said, in the warden's office? He's like, yeah. So all kinds of stuff's going through my head, and it finally just hit me like my clemency petition. And the dude that was standing beside me, he hit me on my shoulder. He's like, man, what you do wrong? I was like, and I just kind of like turned and looked at him a little bit. And he like hit me again. He's like, man, what you do wrong? And I'm like, I said, man, it can't be. He said, what? What's wrong? I said, man, my clemency petition. He's like, man, you better hurry up and go over there. He said, what you talking about? It can't be. He said, you better hope that's what it is. Man, I went and put my coffee back in my room. And I'm kind of nervous when I'm walking out the door. He walks out the door with me, and he wants to walk with me all the way to the warden's office, but the guard told him, no, you got to stay here. I mean, I think the guards knew what was going on. I think they knew the whole scoop the whole time. The warden's office wasn't, from my unit to the warden's office was probably about a football field. But that walk seemed like forever. It took me forever to get there. Like, because I'm walking and I hear the birds chirping and I see the trees moving and I'm looking in the sky and the wind's blowing. I'm like, I'm trying to figure out what it is. And I'm like, I'm knowing that's what it is. And I'm hoping that's what it is, but I'm still trying to figure out, like, is that what it really is? So finally I get to the door and I like take a deep breath. I look up at the sign to make sure it's the warden's office. I knock on the door. I open it up and the secretary tells me to come on in. And she's like, "Are you Israel?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, Israel Torres." I said, "Yes, ma'am." She's like, "Oh, come on in." She says, "Go have a seat in the warden's office. So he wants to talk to you." So I go in the warden's office and I'm just standing there. I mean, there's 2 chairs for me to sit down, but I'm just standing up because I see a piece of paper on the corner of his desk. And I'm trying to like peek at it while he's not looking. I'm trying to peek at it to see what it is. And he tells me to sit down. So I sit down and I'm sitting at the edge of my chair, still trying to look at the paper. And he just asked me a couple of questions. He's like, "Have we talked before?" I was like, "Not that I can recall." He was like, "Yeah, I think we have." And I said, "If we have," I said, "the only thing I probably asked you was if it was okay for your staff to write me support letters or character letters on my behalf because I was filing a clemency petition." And he looks at me and he like shakes his finger at me. He said, "That's right." He said, "I remember now." He said, "You did come to me and ask me that. We got a letter from the White House today and your clemency was granted."
Wow.
Man, I started crying. I put my
Yeah.
head, my face in my hands, and I mean, I can still feel it now. Like, I mean, just telling that part of the story is like, it gets me thinking about that day. I mean, I remember that day like it was yesterday. I mean, it was a beautiful feeling. I mean, a miracle. I mean, God sent it to Obama's heart to look at my petition and sign it.
And did you walk out of prison that day?
No, I walked out. I stayed there. I stayed there in the prison where I was at for another week, and then they sent me across the street to the camp. And I mean, of course, all the guards knew me at the prison. So, I mean, everybody on the compound knew me. So as I'm walking around for that rest of that week that I stayed there, everybody's telling me congratulations, coming up to me, giving me hugs and shaking my hand. And the guards are telling me congratulations. If anybody deserved it, it was you. You was a role model inmate. I mean, all kinds of stuff. So I mean, it was good to hear that from. I mean, even from the guards, because I mean, I didn't give them no trouble. Only when I first got there because I was fresh off the street, but they seen me grow. They seen me mature. I mean, I was a kid when I first got there. So, and there was guards that were still there when I left. So they watched me grow up and become a man in prison. And that's why they would tell me, if there ain't nobody more deserving than you.
Well, it was certainly for them to say that to you. That's because they made decisions inside that put you in a great path for the president to let you out of prison. And I know there were political issues at the time and a different era, but we never know when that era is going to come again. And so guys who are living in the shoe right now or living in prisons without hope, I like them to listen to your story, Israel, because you had the strength to get through 15 years in prison and put yourself on a path. So when the opportunity come, you were in the best place for it. And maybe you've got some words to people inside who are living with life sentences or long sentences about what they should be doing to put themselves in the best position.
Right. First thing, I mean, praying, whatever your belief is, whatever your religion is, pray. Never give up hope, never give up faith. And even though you're in a shoe and whatever program you're in, the smooth program, whatever, that don't stop you from education. You can always either get a correspondence class, you can write send a request to the law library and ask them what are the steps that you need to take these correspondence classes. Or, I mean, there's classes, if you can take classes while you're in there to keep your mind occupied, main thing, because you're in a 8x9 cell, 8x7 cell, whatever. To keep your mind occupied, keep your brain on something else other than you being where you're at. Education is good. Reading the Bible, praying, staying in contact with your family and loved ones to help you get through your worst times. And never believe that there ain't a chance for you to come home, because my story tells it.
And that's what we need are stories like yours, Israel, because sometimes, even though you're working hard, it seems like no matter how hard you work, nothing's coming. But when we get to listen to stories like yours, we start saying, maybe that could be me someday. Exactly. And I'm going to work. I know that a story like yours would have inspired me when I was inside, and you still inspire me today. And I know that you're out here working right now and supporting your family, and you're successful. And just want to thank you for taking the time to share your story with our brothers in prison.
Yes, sir. No problem. It's a pleasure to always talk to you. You're inspiring as well. What you do is amazing, and just keep up the good work.
Well, I can tell you, we've had an opportunity to go to DC together, and I hope that there will be more opportunities for us to continue working to build a better system. Yes, Thanks again, Israel, for sharing your story with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.